Hi everyone, welcome back to our Benchrest series. So today we've got part one, and this is going to be testing the rifle itself. So what do we want to test? Well, definitely we want to see the speed that this rifle is shooting at. That's one of the things we want to see. Apart from that, we also want to see the consistency that the rifle is shooting at. And the best way to do that is obviously with the chronograph. So I do have my own chronograph here on the end of the rifle, but if you do not have a chronograph, go to your shooting club, go to a friend that's got one, and just do this test. So the reason this is important is obviously because we want to maximize the accuracy of this rifle at 25 meters. We need to have fairly consistent feet per second, and it's not about power, but it's more about consistency, and definitely that's something that we're hoping that we're going to achieve today. If we do not achieve that, then we'll have to maybe work a little bit on the internals just to get it operating smoother. By getting it to operate smoother, we'll be able to get more consistency. So definitely something we want to look at. The other factor that we need to consider, because we're using CO2 in this, is the number of shots that we get. So obviously when we're doing the bench rest, we need to have a minimum of 25 shots, which is at the target itself. But we also want to leave ourselves a little bit of room to move, because you get 5 minutes before you start shooting to zero in your rifle, and that's on the day of shooting. So you might want to at least give yourself 5 shots there. And then what sometimes happens when you're shooting is the conditions change whilst you're busy shooting. So you need to keep that in mind as well. You might need to give yourself an extra 5 or so shots. So I'm bargaining on 40 shots in total, but in reality you're probably going to need around 35 shots or so in order to see, or in order to complete a bench rest session. Let's call it that. So definitely. That's something that's important to remember as well. So let me just check the chronograph is on. Alright, we are recording there. So I'm going to shoot a string of 40 shots. I have put in a new capsule here. I've shot off the first 3 shots because those are usually the most inconsistent. Usually we find a little bit higher feet per second on the first 3 shots. So I've fired those off, and now we're going to see what we can do. Obviously I'm not going to show you this whole test session because it's going to be a little bit pointless to watch me shooting with a chronograph, but I'll show you just afterwards the numbers and where we ended up. Alright, so let's get cracking. Another thing that you can also just keep in mind, when I'm doing this test, I'm allowing for at least 20 to 25 seconds in between shots, just so that we can get the most accurate reading possible. And then also, I'm using a budget pellet for this. If you can afford to use expensive pellets to do this test, you can do so, but we should get fairly close with the budget pellet. Hi everyone, welcome back. So we've done our shots, and we've got the results. I've tabled everything here together. I'm going to show you on the screen as well. So we ended up taking 39 shots because it was dropping so low. It didn't help. I carried on taking shots. So what can we see? Well, if you look at the first couple of shots, so let me show you on the graph itself. So the first couple of shots up till around about 10 or 11 shots, we had a pretty consistent feet per second spread, and we had the one shot that dropped off. I'm not even going to count that because I think that was a mistake somewhere. So the one shot dropped off, but other than that we had a very nice and consistent feet per second spread in the first couple of shots, and then we see it starts to drop, and here by shot 30 we see it really starts to drop off pretty quickly from there. So when it comes to bench rest shooting, this that you see here, where it starts to drop off gradually, it's not a train smash. At 25 meters, you can still be able to manage it. At 50 meters, that's going to be a problem for you. So what I think I'm going to do, so I'm going to try, so in terms of tuning, they usually refer to this as the Korean cliff. So what happens is you start here and you gradually just start to decline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make it so that we get a more consistent feet per second across the full spread. And the one worry that I have, and the reason that I'm going to make the changes that I'm going to make, is that we're only getting around about 32 to 33 shots that we can work with. And I think that's going to make our margin for error a little bit too tight. So I'm rather going to see if I can just stretch that out to 40 bit. So what does that mean? What we're going to do? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the gun, going to clean up all the internals, polish up the surfaces, especially on the hammer and on the valve itself, just to make all of that operate as smooth as possible, because that will also definitely contribute to better consistency. But the next thing I'm going to do is something a little bit different. So standard on the CP2, it comes with a transfer port of 3.5 millimeters. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reduce that transfer port. So what that does is it's going to take away some of the air. So we're going to drop in feet per second, but it's going to give us more shots, and hopefully we'll come off of that Korean cliff and just get a more balanced and more stable portion of our, or a more constant shot cycle over the full 40 shots. So we definitely have to get to 40 shots, but we also want to make sure that we are more consistent across those 40 shots. It doesn't help we're shooting 650 feet per second, but we're dropping off each and every shot. We want to try and be, even if it's 550 feet per second, but it's consistent, that's better for us when we're looking at Benchrest. So there is a couple of other aspects that we can look at as well later down the line to try and curb the things that come due to us dropping in feet per second. So due to dropping in feet per second means we're going to be more affected by the wind, we're going to be more affected by some other factors, but we'll get to those and we'll handle them when we get to it. So next up, going to clean up the gun on the internals, and then we're going to change out the transfer port, put in a 3mm transfer port, and hopefully we'll see a little bit of an improvement there in terms of that shot string, in terms of our number of shots. So let's see how it goes.